So I'd like to start this conversation by talking about Estonia. Estonia has lived through a Russian cyber operations longer than most European nations. The country experienced...
Oh non, faut que je l'enlève.
The country experienced one of the first large-scale state-linked attack that was in 2017. It was believed at first that it was a terrorist attack, but then it was then discovered that the Russians were actually behind it. How would you describe the current cyber threat to Europe, and how has it evolved, perhaps, since the Ukrainian war?
Good morning, nice to be here, thank you. Basically how I would describe is, like you said in the introduction, it's like a continuous pressure campaign against all the European and NATO countries. So basically we don't have any like specific only cyber attacks or DDoS attacks, it's a continuous pressure. Sorry. Hybrid warfare, hybrid info operations. Definitely, there is not only like state actors or Russian APTs, there are pro-Russian groups, what are like activist groups, and they're quite well coordinated, and there are also not so good coordinated individual pro-Russian activists who, for example, make those quite low cost but highly disruptive campaigns. For example, they're saying to schools that you have bombs, to the hospitals and so on and so on. And at the same time, we also monitor dark web and see what's going to happen. And I believe it's the same for Europe. Definitely in Estonia we're the front line, but and we have connections, or we can basically analyze that every time our government decides to make new sanctions against Russia, then we have a new wave of DDoS attacks and so on and so on. So it's like linked directly, and all the society is involved.
Anssi, Finland recently joined NATO and shares a long border also with Russia. From Finland's vantage point, how closely are cyber attacks linked to geopolitical tensions, would you say?
Yes. First of all, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. Great to be here. Yes. Before we joined NATO, or during the process, we actually thought that what would be situation or will Russia do things, so to say. But when we joined, we didn't see any big change, so to say. But what we actually saw when there started the full-scale war in Ukraine was that also cyber threat level and increased in Finland. Much more activity in cyber domain, and actually this has stayed on that higher level since that. Also about the is it showing political like motivations behind those attacks? It's very hard to say, because quite often it looks like it's not very well chosen targets.
Right.
At least what we think and see in Finland. But many times when they do campaigns, they actually choose more or less like weak spots, like in which they can see vulnerabilities, unpatched edge devices or others, and they just are very opportunistic and try to penetrate through those weak spots. So that's pretty much what we see.
So both of your countries, Estonia and Finland, have had to think about resilience much earlier than perhaps other European nations. Jonas, Estonia often talks about digital continuity of the state. It's the first e-nation. What does it mean in practice, and how do you design a digital state that can function even during a cyber attack? Because some would say, well, if everything is digitized, if there's an attack, then everything at the same time could shut down.
Yeah, good question, because we have been in cyber war basically 20 years now. We have studied to live with this situation. Basically, digital continuity means that no matter what happens in Estonia or in Europe, what risks go into action, every services, or at least critical services for society and entrepreneurs, have to remain working. And luckily we have chosen 25 years ago totally distributed architecture-based e-state. And since 2007, when first large-scale Russian cyber attack took place, it's a continuous mindset of all our actors in our e-state that every time you build some new e-services, they have to be end-user-centric, they have to add value, but at the same time they have to work in every occasion. And we continuously run different penetration tests. We seek for single point of failures, and if we find something, then we just make it more resilient. So it's like a cross-sectoral mindset. We have this Estonian information standard, which is mandatory for all vital service providers to conduct, and so on and so on. So it's since the COVID pandemic, there is basically all Estonian e-service, or we don't have any non-digitalized service anymore. So it's a quite complex exercise to solve.
So Estonia is, I would say, a cyber native, a digitally native country indeed. UNCY Finland has a long tradition also of what you call whole-of-society resilience. You've been preparing for a confrontation with Russia for a long time now. How does this translate into cyberspace, and what role also do private companies specifically have, but also infrastructure operators and citizens as well? What role do they have to play in the national defense strategy?
Yes, we have a long history of preparedness, and after the wars we had, 1940s, since that we've been more or less like preparing, and of course earlier it was on those traditional sectors in physical world, so to say, but nowadays of course digital environment is part of that. And for that, excuse me, we talk about comprehensive security approach in Finland, which means that all stakeholders have their role in that preparedness. Government agencies, private sector, and even citizens. And what it really means in digital side is that, for example, our center, we work very close with private sector. We also, and actually the key issue in that all is trust. So when we need to have high trust between the parties, and when we have this trust, then we can, for example, share information very easily, because we trust each other and know that if I give that piece of information to you, I can trust that you won't, for example, forward it to someone else, which is not allowed. So in that sense, for example, we get 20,000 of notifications, voluntary-based and based on trust, from Finnish companies and organizations each year, 20,000 of them, all voluntary-based. So because companies and also citizens in Finland, they really want to inform us if they see something.
So Europe is now adopting many different regulations. You have NIS2, you have Cyber Resilience Act, the new defense cooperation as well. But regulation doesn't build resilience, does it? From your experience, what is actually still missing at the European level? You were talking about sharing information. What would you say is missing, both of you, on this question?
Yes, regulation is of course good thing, because it sets some requirements to actors, but I think we can still improve information sharing, for example. Because I believe that in the future of course we will and can use technology to defend and protect our systems, and we need to do that. But we still need to have people, and when people cooperate, they share information.
Yeah, actually, we were discussing the same question yesterday with Anssi, and I liked his answer, which was money, basically, time and money, because we have fair amount of different regulations, but we don't have sufficient time to implement all those. And also, European Union is quite versatile and quite big. The preparedness of different countries is quite different. So all those new regulations, the main question is how to implement it in your ecosystem. As specific in Estonia, we have the experience of like 25 years, which in ICT is a total legacy. So we constantly have to refigure how to implement all EU regulations into Estonian ecosystem, and at the same time it has to be cost efficient because we don't never have sufficient funds to follow or to just adopt new rules and not left old ones.
So let me perhaps finish this interview with a more forward-looking question. Europe is entering clearly, as you said, a period where cybersecurity, geopolitics, but also defense are increasingly intertwined. If you look perhaps 5 years ahead, I know we can't predict anything, but what should Europe do perhaps to ensure that its digital infrastructure and its critical infrastructure and also its democratic institutions remain secure? What would be your plan?
I can start. Definitely this whole of society approach that everything is inclusive. You have to start raising the awareness from the kindergarten to the elderly homes. At the moment, the rising threat in Estonia is definitely, or the hottest topic is everything regarding frauds. We have telcos, banks, and police and border guard, and our organization hand in hand fighting this rising trend that average Estonian is losing per one fraud like 15,000 euros, which is in Estonia is quite a big sum. And the same goes for envisioning how to protect critical infrastructure. Everything is connected. At least in Estonia, we rely on private sector entities. We have to invest to make them bulletproof and future-proof. And definitely, we have to acknowledge all the trends from the development of technology like post-quantum cryptography. Our e-state is 25 years old, but it has to be future-proof also. So we have to always find what are the weakest links and how to make them transparent and future-proof and resilient. And yeah, okay, sorry, lost an idea.
As I already mentioned, we really need to use new technology, for example, AI to defend and protect our system, of course, and all the other technologies like quantum computing when it comes in the future. But I think the most important thing is to change culture and also change or how do I say, develop our mindsets so that we take preparedness seriously and we think always worst case scenario and try to do best we can.
So maybe one last question. You were talking about raising kids from the get-go, cyber by design. What exactly do you do from kindergarten up? Like, how do you raise awareness within, for citizens? Because we're going to be talking about social engineering later on. We know that the human factor now, because the systems are becoming more and more robust, attackers are now going through the human weak link again. Yeah. A little bit more perhaps than in the last couple of months. So how do you prepare people to that, and how do you raise awareness? You said from kindergarten.
Actually, we have different studies, trainings, exercises. We have this AI initiative conducted by Estonian president that we should hand out or make available or AI tools for the students from the middle school or this preschool.
Yep.
And yeah, this is like the whole system and the rising awareness out of campaigns. I can give you an example. This year, January and February, out of all the frauds, basically together with police and border guard, we investigated those things. Everyone thinks that e-state is leaking, basically, that our electronic identity is weak and so on and so on. But when we investigate, then we can prove that 91% has just given their PIN codes to the
attacker.
Yeah, and basically this 9% is also has done it. So basically, we have to raise awareness how everything works. Definitely in Estonia, that all public sector services are open source, and basically, if someone thinks it's suspicious, they can hire an IT expert or basically ask from AI how it works. And together with actually AI, it makes all the systems more transparent. And because, for example, we know that citizens luckily trust government is because we have conducted elections for 20 years. And last parliament elections, more than 50% of all the votes were casted online via computer, not going to the polling office. So luckily, citizens and entrepreneurs trust government, and it's like a joint effort to raise this awareness.
Maybe one last.
Yes, of course, it's very important to tell people, tell citizens what are the threats and how you can avoid those. What we've been doing in Finland is of course, the same kind of things. For example, having public campaigns of phishing threats, for example, together with law enforcement in Finland, and also producing lots of material you can download from our website, for example. And also we use lots of Finnish media to get our message spread all over. And that's very important also. But it's also good to see that Finnish media is also interested in what's happening in cyberspace and asks us many often that, okay, we have this kind of phishing campaign or this kind of thing, what are your thoughts and ideas and how we can avoid those. So I think it's, once again, it's a cooperation.
Well, Anssi Karkainen and Jonas Heiter, thank you very much indeed for sharing your experience with us today here at the INCYBER Forum. I think we can give them a warm round of applause. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.